All right, today we're going to jump into a really fascinating idea called gracious humility. Now, this is a concept that goes way beyond just, being polite. We're going to break it down using a powerful framework that comes from a sermon by Pastor W.F. Kumuyi. So let's get right into it.
So, first things first, what exactly is gracious humility? It's probably not a term you hear every day, and it's definitely not just about being modest. As we're about to see, the source material paints a picture of something much, much deeper.
And here it is, the core definition we're working with. Gracious humility isn't some act we put on, and it's not something we can just muscle through with our own willpower. The absolute key idea here is that it's a quality we receive through grace. That's what makes it genuine, something that comes from the inside out. Now, to really wrap our heads around this, the framework doesn't start with a list of rules or abstract ideas. Nope. Instead, it points us to one single foundational story. This is presented as the ultimate example, the gold standard that everything else is built on. So, we're transported to this specific moment from John chapter 13. Picture this. Jesus is with his disciples at supper. He knows his time is almost up, that he's about to face the cross. And in this incredibly heavy, significant moment, what does he do? He decides to teach one last, very hands-on lesson. And what's so powerful here is how it's broken down step by step. He gets up from the meal, he takes off his outer garments, which is a huge symbol of his status, he grabs a towel and a basin of water, and then he does the job of the lowest servant in the house. He starts washing their feet. It's a very deliberate, physical act of service. And boom, there it is. This really drives the whole point home. He's not being mysterious about it, he states it plainly. This wasn't just some random act of kindness. He was setting a very clear, direct example for them to follow. So what does this powerful example really show us? Well, the source breaks it down into 4 key things. First, highness laid aside, basically letting go of your position, your authority. Second, identification with servanthood, being willing to do jobs that other people might think are beneath them. Third, indifference to the praise of men, acting without needing a pat on the back. And finally, teachability, just staying humble and open enough to always be learning. Okay, so we've seen this incredible outward example. But how does that become an inward experience? The next part of our framework is all about the shift, moving from something we just observe to a quality that becomes a real internal part of who we are. And this slide really nails the distinction. On one hand, you have the example, it's outward, it's a historical event we can study. But on the other hand, you have the experience, and that is totally inward. It's described as a personal transformation, a quality you actually receive that becomes a lived, day-to-day reality. And this principle is really the engine behind the whole experiential side of humility. According to the source, you just can't manufacture it on your own. It's a gift of grace, and that grace is given to the humble, but it's actually resisted by the proud. So, to kind of wrap up this section, the goal isn't just to copy an action. It's about a fundamental internal shift, moving away from pride towards a heart that's been cleansed, and moving from relying on yourself to living a life that's submitted to a higher authority. Okay, so we've got the example, and we've got the internal experience. The final piece of the puzzle looks at the evidence. How does this internal quality actually, show up in someone's life? For this, we get 3 quick, powerful case studies. First up, Moses. He's offered the chance to have a great nation made from his own family line, but he turns it down. Why? To stand in the gap for his people. He chose their preservation over his own personal glory. Then you've got Isaac. The source highlights his incredible submission when his father, Abraham, is about to sacrifice him. There's no record of him fighting back or questioning. It's just this amazing display of trust and humility before authority. And finally, there's a guy named Theophilus. He was a most excellent official, a man with serious rank and status. And yet he humbly received 2 very long letters of instruction, which we now know as the Gospel of Luke and the Book of Acts. It just shows a teachable spirit no matter how high up you are. So let's pull all these pieces together for the final takeaway. When you look at the example, then the experience, and then the evidence, you start to see this really clear, logical path for understanding what gracious humility is all about. It really boils down to these 3 stages, doesn't it? First, you observe the ultimate example. Second, you move past just observing and actually experience an internal transformation through grace. And third,
that inner change can't help but produce outward evidence in your actions and your choices. And that brings us to a final question to really chew on. After looking at this whole framework, is genuine humility ultimately something we do, or is it something we first have to receive? It's a question that really gets to the heart of the difference between doing something and truly being someone.